Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, the second part of the Learn Over Lunch webinar series, Leveraging LinkedIn. We will get started in just another minute or two. If you could please give us a moment to make sure we're all set with everything going on the tech side of things. If you could also type into the chat field and let me know that you can hear me clearly, that would be great. And then we'll get started with everything in just another minute. Bear with us for just a minute, folks. We want to make sure that we're ready technically. My intention is to show you some different pages of LinkedIn itself, and I want to make sure that that's working properly before we begin. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for your patience. I just wanted to make sure that I was going to be able to show you the presentation slides as well as LinkedIn during today's webinar, and it appears that that will be working now. So thank you all for bearing with us. My name is Shannon Gallo. I'm the Manager of Career Services here at the School of Professional Studies, part of the City University of New York, and I'm delighted to present to you today's webinar on leveraging LinkedIn. Before we get started with the content, I did want to show you how you can ask questions during today's webinar. I will answer all of your questions at the end of the presentation, but you are encouraged and welcome to send the questions in throughout the program. I'm happy to have the help of Kelsey Richardson and Anthony Sweeney this afternoon. They will be taking and fielding your questions so that I'm able to answer them as best I can at the end. If you do have any technical problems during today's webinar, please call 1-800-263-6317, then press 1 for GoToWebinar and 2 for tech support. One other note is that if we do get some interruptions from background noise or other things coming through from Midtown Manhattan, we'll just try to pause and let those things pass by and then pick right back up where we left off. Once again, my name is Shannon Gallo. I oversee career services here at CUNY SPS. If you are not familiar with our programs in our school, I invite you to check out our website. I also invite you to follow me on Twitter, and I did not include on here, but I obviously invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn if you are not already. It should be easy enough to search for me on the site. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with everything. I just wanted to sort of begin with the statement here. If you don't have a profile yet, you should. If you don't use the site now, you must. Before I go further, we're going to go ahead and do 2 questions. And this will be an opportunity for you as attendees to let me know a little bit about the extent of your use of LinkedIn. So the first of those polling questions is, do you currently have a LinkedIn profile? Yes, no, or not sure. Looks like a lot of responses are coming in. So thank you for participating. We'll go over the results of those responses in just a minute, and then we'll ask the second question. I found that this was always an interesting question to ask anytime we're doing a presentation on LinkedIn. Okay, this is fantastic. I'm thrilled and slightly surprised, but it looks like 93% of our attendees do have a LinkedIn profile and just 7% do not. So that's fantastic. Okay, now here's the second question. To what extent do you use the site? And the choices are, I haven't logged in for weeks or months, once a week or more, I check my profile and log in, or only when I'm job searching do I use LinkedIn. So take a moment and check which of those responses you think best describes the extent to which you use LinkedIn currently. Okay, it looks like we had some technical difficulties with the polling question. So I'll go ahead and move forward. I don't want to spend any more time on the polls if they're not working properly today. So most of the time when I present a workshop or a webinar related to LinkedIn, many of the participants do have a profile, which is what the responses were to the first polling question. But unfortunately, many of those participants don't typically use the site very readily. It's something that they just log into once in a while, that they maybe don't really pay too much attention to if they are not really actively searching for work, or if they're uncomfortable for one reason or another with social media. They just kind of set up a profile to the basic level, and then that's really the extent of it. And I think that if you take a look at these big numbers on your screen, that should give you an indication of why LinkedIn is so crucial to use. And when I say crucial to use, I don't mean just for job searching. I mean that it's a crucial tool for anyone to use regarding personal branding. It's a great way to maintain connections and to build and maintain relationships as well. Over 380 million people use LinkedIn, and more than 107 million use the site in the US alone. The other statistic that I find, pretty amazing is that 94% of companies use LinkedIn for recruiting. And even if they're not really supposed to use it to make decisions about hiring, an estimated 2 out of 3 hiring managers do it anyway. So that just goes to show you that it's really a crucial tool to be using, whether you're an active job seeker or you're simply using it to build your brand and your professional network. So in today's webinar, I'm going to go over the basics of a profile. I'm going to talk a little bit about recommendations and endorsements on the site. I'm going to go over connections and making connections, which is a crucial piece of using LinkedIn. I'm going to talk a little bit about the groups function on the site, the job search function on the site, and lastly, I'll go over branding. Okay, so those are the topics that I'm going to go over in today's webinar. Basics of your profile. So on your screen, you'll see my own profile. And this should sort of give you an indication. I'll show you what my profile looks like to the people that I have connected with. I have a photo. That's a pretty recent photo of myself. I have a summary. I have a listing of my experience, my education and skill sets, which come with endorsements from my colleagues and connections. I have additional information about my interests, organizations to which I belong, volunteer experiences and causes that I care about, connections, groups, and who are some of the people and organizations that I follow. And this is just sort of the basics of what I have sort of at a minimum. Notice my title and heading. I don't have directly underneath my name, I don't have my job title, which is Manager of Career Services. Instead, I have sort of a descriptive phrase, Career Development Professional, HR and Staffing Background, because I've chosen to use that valuable space under my name to describe sort of who I am overall as a professional rather than repeating my current job title. I also have, as I mentioned, my experience and education listed on my profile and other types of information included as well. Now, the recommendations section on a profile is, one of the most important ones, I would say, in terms of adding credibility, and as well as the skills section, which is a place for your colleagues and contacts to endorse you for skill sets. Again, adding some credibility. So on my profile, I have it set up in sort of a specific way. I have recommendations listed under each of my previous jobs. I have them so that you're able to view those recommendations within each of those jobs that are listed. And then I also have a section at the bottom of my profile whereby one can read all of the recommendations for all of the different positions that I have held. Something that setting up your profile is the order in which the sections are placed on your profile. So if I were currently a student studying for something that I was looking for a career change in, I might decide to move my education section up to be on the top part of my resume. Or if I wanted to highlight my skill sets because they were related to the job that I wanted to do more so than my experience or education, then I might choose to put that section on top. And what I've done with my profile is I've chosen to put the recommendations section toward the bottom of the profile because I also have the recommendations visible within each of the jobs to which those recommendations apply. Who should you ask for recommendations? This is very much the same kinds of people whom you would ask for recommendations or references if you're job searching. So former managers or supervisors, former colleagues, former clients, current colleagues, classmates, professors. These are just a couple of the people that might be good to provide you with recommendations on your profile. One, I think, easy way, well, there's actually two ways that I would recommend you ask for recommendations. One would be if someone compliments your work or goes above and beyond to thank you for some sort of project or assignment that you worked on, maybe say to them, thank you so much for noticing, my good work. It would really mean a lot if you would recommend me on my profile. Another way to get recommendations is to provide them. I've certainly provided recommendations to colleagues, acquaintances, other people who I know through work or through volunteering and charitable causes. So that's another good way to get recommendations, because when you get a recommendation, your network is able to see that you've gotten a recommendation, and that may inspire, when you've given a recommendation, your network is able to see that you've done so that may inspire others to then recommend you as well. The other important part, I think, in terms of adding credibility is the skills and endorsements section. And on my resume, you can see that I've got sort of top skills listed here. And I've chosen the order of these skills, even though I have 77 endorsements for the recruiting skill set. I've moved that down in my profile because the work that I'm doing currently is more related to resume writing, interviewing, career counseling, higher ed, those kinds of things. So I've been able to sort of move the different skills around however I would like them to be listed to highlight certain skill sets and maybe move others down. It's still important that my connections and others who look at my LinkedIn profile are able to see my full set of skills, but it's more important to me that they see these skill sets currently. The other thing is that these numbers here on the left-hand side indicate how many people have endorsed that I have that skill set. So there are 25 individuals who have endorsed that I have the skill set of resume writing, and 83 have endorsed that I have the skill set of career counseling. So the longer I have these skill sets sort of front and center on my profile, the more likely I'm going to be to get more endorsements for them. And when someone who doesn't know me is looking at my profile, if I have 83 people saying that I have the skill set of career counseling, they can make a pretty educated guess that that is something that I, in fact, am good at. So another important piece of LinkedIn is obviously connections, and this is sort of kind of what drives the activity on the site otherwise. I've been using LinkedIn for probably 12 years now. I'm not even sure exactly how many connections I have. In all honesty, probably more than half of the connections, if I pass them on the street today, I may not recognize them and they may not recognize me, but there are certainly a fair amount of individuals who I'm connected with on the site that I have maintained a relationship with, either virtually or in person otherwise, and therefore it's still a very useful network to me. And when I talk a little bit about jobs and groups, you'll be able to see a little bit more about connections. But I'll just sort of go over some basic stuff about how you can sort of get connections to build how many you have, who are the kinds of people you should try to connect with on the site, and finally, what are the invitations, how do the invitations to connect work? So on the site, if you go to the tab sort of on the top under connections, you can take a look at your connections, and this is what it would look like if you were on your own LinkedIn profile. So immediately when I come up to this section, it allows me to sort my connections different ways. And I'm going to go today and search by new connections and see some of the different people that I've connected with recently. I can also do some filtering if I want to, perhaps I want to see if I have any connections in Washington, D.C. So I might filter connections to see if anyone in my network is located in that area. Perhaps I'm working with a student or alumni job seeker who's looking for work within the DC metro area, and that may be useful for me to see if I have any connections there. There's also a section here along the top that gives me the opportunity to reach out to people in my network to better build and maintain those relationships. So if I wanted to reach out to a person and tell them congratulations on a new job, or tell them how exciting it is that they've been working somewhere for a couple of years, LinkedIn makes it pretty easy for you to be able to do those things. I just clicked down here, and LinkedIn is also providing me with profile information about people who might be of interest to me to connect. So someone who has mutual connections to me. Perhaps LinkedIn is sort of, with their algorithms and programs, believes that I might be interested in connecting with that person. And so they really have a way of making it easy for you to build your network and maintain those connections as well. Finally, there is a way, especially if you're just starting out on the site, to sort of do a more large-scale outreach to connections. So if you go to the Connections tab and you click on Add Connections, it will allow you to import your address book, and then you can go through and you can check. I don't want to go through that right now. Then you can go through and you can check to see if there are people that you have in your address book within your different email programs that you may want to send an invitation to connect with you on LinkedIn. Just a final note on connections. Many times I'm asked the question, what about people who I don't know? They ask me to connect with them. And, you know, I think that that's really sort of a personal decision. You know, I personally, if I can look at someone's profile and see that they're have some sort of mutual connected interest to me. For example, typically if someone who is a student here at CUNY SPS sends me a LinkedIn invitation, I will likely connect with them on the site. Conversely, if someone who I can't tell if they are a student or graduate from CUNY SPS, if I can't see that they're a graduate from my own alma mater, and I can't see that they have some sort of reason, if they haven't provided any detail about why they're interested in connecting with me on the site, I generally would not accept those connections. And I think that it's, you know, up to you as far as what you're comfortable with. But I will say that the more connections you have, the more useful the site will be to you, because a lot of the activity is based on who you're connected with and who they're connected with. So that's just, you know, sort of a that's my own general sort of protocol when it comes to accepting connections. And I sort of follow that same protocol when I'm requesting connections. And if it's a person that I don't really know, I generally will include in my invitation just a sentence to explain why I'm interested in connecting. And then that generally works so that they understand that you're not just trying to mass connect with people on LinkedIn. If you know, like I said at the beginning, if you have questions, feel free to send them in, and I'll do my best to address them at the end. You know, generally, because we'll be a little bit pressed for time today, you'll want to make sure that you keep your questions related to LinkedIn. If you're interested in career services in general at SPS, we can certainly connect with you offline. But as I said, if you have questions, feel free to send them in at any time, and I'll answer them at the end. So moving into another function on LinkedIn that I think is very useful, groups. I'll go through and I'll show you a little bit about the groups function on LinkedIn. It's in the process of being upgraded, and I was looking through a little bit more of the details about the upgrade, and it's more based on how the different groups are classified, because as it is now, some groups are open groups where anyone can join and anyone can participate. Some groups are closed groups where you would need to sort of request to join a group, and then it's determined by a group's administrator who is allowed to post and participate in those groups. And I think that they're going to be making some small changes to the groups in that respect. So certainly, as it says on the screen, they're working on upgrades to make groups simpler and more relevant. There's certainly going to be more to come on that. So let me just show you a couple of things within the groups function. The first group I'll show you is the CUNY School of Professional Studies group. If you have not joined our group and you're a student or a graduate or otherwise connected with CUNY SPS, I would encourage you to join our group. As you can see on here, just earlier today, I went on and I posted a discussion which includes the latest Career Connect newsletter. I've done so. There's someone had posted information about resume tips. Kelsey Richardson also posted some relevant information about mistakes that job seekers make, different things like that. So this is sort of a, gives you an example of what sort of group discussions can be like. Another group that I will show you, okay, right here. Now this particular group is Career Counselor Technology Group. So this is obviously of interest to me because it's related to my field, career counseling, and it's also related to technology, which is certainly an interest of mine, considering so much of what we do is tied with technology that I feel like this is a useful group for me to be part of. Last week, I believe it was, when I was preparing my remarks for today, I actually posted a discussion in this group, and I was thrilled because earlier today someone responded, and I thought this would be a perfect example to show those of you attending how group discussions can work. So I posted, "Hi everyone, seeking job search success stories. If you know anyone who is successful finding a job or internship due to LinkedIn, I want to hear from you." And then I went on further to say that I'm doing a webinar and I wanted to share stories. So earlier today, this person who is a career counselor at another school system posted, "Yes, I know of someone who was contacted by a recruiter on LinkedIn because of his profile picture and smile. In short time, he was offered a new job and accepted." So this is interesting because that's a wonderful story that shows that LinkedIn can be effective with job seekers. And this is also a good way to show those of you attending that the group's functions work. I posted this discussion, sort of a crowdsource, if I may, and someone responded with exactly what I was hoping for. If I wanted to take it a step further and I was interested in learning more about this particular student and find out, did he have a specific profile picture taken professionally? Was it a snapshot? What kind of job was it? What kind of recruiter was it? Then maybe I could reach out to her and say, "Thank you for responding to my comment. I'd love to learn more about this success story." And then from there, we may begin a virtual relationship where we can share sort of stories and help one another with sharing best practices, all because I posted a question on LinkedIn and she responded. Another thing that's useful in some of the groups is the jobs function. I looked earlier today. This is another group for professionals within colleges and employers. And in this group, you can go under the Jobs tab, and you can see that a number of positions have been posted here: a career services position, academic advisor position, and then also some human resources related positions. So this is a good way, sort of, if you're in these groups, that you may not otherwise have seen this job posting if you didn't look within the Jobs tab in this group related to your industry. So that's just sort of a rough overview of what the groups functions include on LinkedIn. It's a very, the groups on LinkedIn, it's massive. The number of groups, I forget exactly how many there are. They pretty much based on your location, your field or industry, if you're looking for jobs, if you're looking for clients, there's probably a group. It looks like I'm currently a member of 52 groups. If I was interested in finding another group to join, then you can do it in the search tab, click on groups, and then type in some sort of, let's try data analytics and see what kinds of groups come up. Okay. Okay, so 958 groups on LinkedIn related to a simple search for data analytics. I want to choose English. I want to choose, okay, if I wanted to see if I'm in groups related to that, it looks like I am. So I previously joined Big Data Analytics, Strategy, Finance, and Innovation, and then this other group related to data analytics. So just on a field like that, you can see that there are 17,829 discussions in this particular group and over 133,000 members in this particular group. So it's something, you know, I certainly urge you to look into, whether you're job seeking or you're just simply looking for ways to connect with other professionals in your field or other people who might be local to you, other alumni from your school. It's, you know, certainly an interesting and very useful way to be engaged on LinkedIn. Okay, the jobs section on LinkedIn. And this is something that I think is one of the most useful parts of the site. So I'm going to go through and show you sort of how to search for job listings on LinkedIn, show you examples of the methods in which you could apply to jobs that are posted on LinkedIn's job board, and finally give you some pointers on how you can sort of use your connections. I was hesitant to actually put the phrase use your connections because it's more of a sort of a leverage the connections that you have on LinkedIn. And while you might reach out to your connections for assistance with your job search, you also would hope and offer to help your connections with their own job searches. So keep in mind that LinkedIn, like any networking situation, should be cyclical, and it should definitely be a two-way street where you're helping others and they're helping you in return. So the job section on LinkedIn, you go to the tab on the top and click Jobs. And again, LinkedIn has, you know, their algorithms and their programs set it up as such that, you know, as soon as you go to the Jobs tab, they will put positions up that include skill sets that may be of interest to you, skill sets that are related to your profile, or they might include companies that you've looked at before, or they'll look at previous job searches to see what kinds of jobs you might possibly be looking for now. You also can certainly use the search box here at the top to look for jobs, and that's actually what I'm going to show you today. I cheated a bit and I looked ahead of time to find some examples that I could show you, so I'll go ahead and do that. Let's say that I was interested in working in a retail environment within the human resources management field. And one of my favorite retail stores is Saks Fifth Avenue. So let's see if there's anything available in HR at Saks. Oh goodness, look here, Human Resources Manager at Short Hills in Saks Fifth Avenue at the mall at Short Hills. So let's click on this job. And here we see your typical job description. It has the basics about the job, the requirements, what this person would be doing. It also shows that the job was posted a week ago, that there have been 40 applicants to this position via LinkedIn. It also shows who posted the position. This person here actually posted this job to LinkedIn. And it also shows here in this section, get an intro at Saks Fifth Avenue. And it looks like this person here is employed as a recruiting coordinator at Saks Fifth Avenue, and the two of us have 5 mutual connections. So if I were seriously interested in this position, then I could message one of these 6 connections and ask them to connect me with this recruiting coordinator so that I could then ask her more information about the position. I could also look to see if the two of us are possibly in the same group, and maybe I would be able to reach out to her because we're group members. Many people, if they are using the groups functions, they will allow a fellow group member to email them directly. So that can be useful as well. The other thing about this job, excuse me, that's interesting is that this is a job that you would apply to directly through LinkedIn. So if I were going to apply, I would click Apply Now, and it basically will send, with my LinkedIn application for the job, it will send my entire profile to the individual who posted the position. It will show my email address and my phone number, which is actually incorrect. I need to update that. It gives me the opportunity to upload my full resume as well as a cover letter, and it also gives me a chance to follow this particular organization if I wanted to find out more information. And if I were serious about applying for the job, then I might want to follow them, because then I would have the opportunity to see what kinds of things are going on with that company and in that industry. And then once I had uploaded everything and I was ready to apply, I would click Submit, and then my application would go through to the job poster. And then this number here would say 41 instead of 40. So that's how you would sort of apply to a job that was posted on LinkedIn and applying directly through the LinkedIn application system. Okay, going back again, let's look at another favorite retail location of mine, Macy's. It looks like here there is another position related to human resources at that company. And this position is slightly different. Again, it has an overview of the position, the essential functions and qualifications. Again, it explains who posted the job, and it also says, get an introduction at Macy's. And this individual here is one of my closest friends. So I would be able to, if I were interested in this position, I could reach out to this individual and say, hello, I'm interested in this position. Can you give me any pointers on how I can apply, how I can send a strong application, and so forth. I also could look to see if I'm in any groups in common with this individual and if I could perhaps email her directly. The other thing that's different about this particular job is that I'm not going to be applying directly through LinkedIn. Instead, I'm going to click here, and it's going to bring up the job listing on the company's website. And then I would have to apply online just like otherwise. But the reason it's useful to use LinkedIn for job searching is that if I simply went to the Macy's website and looked for the job, I don't have the opportunity to see who has posted the position and if I have any connections at that organization. And one of the reasons, if you notice, I believe in the last position I had 6 people in common, and here I have 11 people in common. That goes right back to having a high number of connections on the site, because the more people I'm connected with increases the number of people that they're connected with, and all of it sort of comes back together. So that's just sort of an example of how you can use the job search function on LinkedIn. And I certainly think that it's a very useful place to look for jobs. Any successful job search involves a combination of, old-fashioned networking and connecting, and, it's about who you know and who knows you. But there's also a certain level of, applying online for positions. And I think that LinkedIn and using the jobs posting section on LinkedIn for your job search is sort of allows you to combine those two successful pieces of a job search. And lastly, when you're looking at the different job listings, I think it's important to keep in mind that even though this is LinkedIn and it's a social, it's a professional social networking site, Everything is confidential, and as you can see on here, I have chosen to keep my job activity private. So that means that people I'm connected with will not be able to see anything that I do related to job search. Now, I'm not searching for a job, but you as active job seekers may be concerned about this. So what you can do is make sure that your job activity is private. That way you can freely use the site for job searching activity, and you don't have to worry about your boss or your colleagues finding out. Okay. The final piece that I'll go over today about LinkedIn is branding. And this is really where where when at the beginning of my presentation today, I spoke about how LinkedIn is useful for everyone, whether you're currently job seeking or not. And personal branding and sort of your personal pitch, that's a webinar in itself, and I could probably talk about that for an hour or more. But some of the important things I think to keep in mind about using LinkedIn for branding, and certainly why it's so important, is credibility. I talked about recommendations and endorsements at the beginning of today's webinar, and that again really adds to your credibility. The other thing about branding is that if you are, say you are a freelance graphic designer and you are looking for new clients and new organizations to hire you to do design. If you say to someone, that you have a lot of creativity and you've done great work for others in the same industry, you're just saying that to them. But if you tell them that and you show them your e-portfolio and you show your e-portfolio, which is listed on your LinkedIn profile, that adds credibility immediately to what you're saying. The same thing is true as if you're a blogger or a writer. If you include your blog postings on your LinkedIn profile, that's a great way for someone to easily see the work that you've done. Same thing is true with work samples. The other thing with branding is that, particularly someone who's an entrepreneur that relies on maybe funding from different organizations, or an entrepreneur who is selling a product. It's important that when you're using LinkedIn and when you're pounding the pavement, so to speak, that you sort of use LinkedIn as almost like your Rolodex, if anyone's familiar with that word from days past, that it's a great way to sort of keep a Rolodex of who you've met and who you're connected with. And it also allows your connections to know who else you're connected with. So if you have one client that you meet with and they say, I'd really love to talk to somebody else that you've already done work for, maybe you could use LinkedIn as your mechanism to connect those two prospective clients. The other thing that I think is important to keep in mind with LinkedIn is it's really a way for you to show someone the big picture. If you give someone a proposal to do some work for their organization, or if you send your resume to someone, or if you meet someone at a networking event and you only have a few minutes to talk with them, they won't be able to sort of see the whole picture of who you are and what you offer. But if you connect with them on LinkedIn and urge them to take a look at your LinkedIn profile, there's your opportunity to really show them the big picture and give them, a holistic view of who you are and what you can do. So that's the thing that I think, is important to keep in mind with LinkedIn, is that much like a resume, it's something that should always be updated. And LinkedIn has a way of keeping on you and reminding you that you need to make updates to your profile and so forth. So, that's another reason why it's important to regularly log into the site to see if there are things you should be updating on your profile, if there are new skills, maybe you took a training course in something new that you want to add to your profile, see if someone has left you a recommendation, maybe someone does some great work for you and you want to make a recommendation for them. It's a great idea to sort of actively look on the site and make updates and changes. Actively look in your groups and see if there are discussions that you can join, different things like that. And that's, again, why, you know, the site is a crucial tool for job seekers, yes, but also for pretty much anyone looking to do, you know, branding, trying to find a way to maintain connections and so forth. So today I've talked about sort of the basics of what a LinkedIn profile should include. I talked about recommendations and endorsements on your site. I spoke a little bit about connections and how to make connections and get more connections. I went over some of the activities within groups. I showed you the job posting section and how to use that on LinkedIn. And finally, I talked a little bit about branding. So hopefully this has been enough information to sort of get you started or to help you to enhance what you're already doing on LinkedIn. I'm going to go ahead and move into answering some of the questions that have been coming in. So please feel free to send more. I'll go over a couple of these. Okay, just bear with me a second. Okay, these are great questions. The first one is pertaining to your profile picture. And the question is, should it be a professional looking picture, dressed in professional attire, maybe in a professional setting? And I think that despite my own picture, I think that if it's possible to have that sort of picture, sure. I think that it certainly looks good. It shows that you have the capability of being a professional, and it also allows people who meet you in a professional capacity to recognize you in your photo because it's also professional. I recently had a new headshot taken, a professional one done, so hopefully I'll be getting that soon and I can change my profile photo. But I have this one up because I felt like it's an accurate picture of what I look like and who I am, and I feel like that's better than having something that's too outdated. And I think the most important thing is for it to be an accurate sort of recent photo. But I do, again, I think despite my own, that it's probably good to have a professional looking one. And it's not that difficult to do it, you know, even if you sort of get a friend or family member to take a quick picture with the smartphone when you have, you know, when you have a suit and tie on, a jacket and tie up against a, you know, a plain background, that can be relatively easy to do. Okay. I will address the question about privacy in a minute. I'll show you a couple things that you can do on your privacy settings. Okay, and then here's a question about adding some of those extra sort of some of those extra things to your profile. So when you go to your profile and it typically automatically opens up to allow you to make edits. LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to add different sections. As I just clicked, you can see on my profile, I could add volunteer experience, awards, coursework that I've had, special projects or publications, maybe if I've you know, written something that's been published, lots of different things like that. You know, I would say that depending on you know, depending on your field and your interests, that, you know, if you had, if you'd like to add an e-portfolio, perhaps, you could do that maybe under projects. Click Add Projects. It gives you the opportunity to name it, to indicate when it was that you used that. You can put the URL. You can add people if you worked on this as part of a team, and also describe what that work was. So, you know, there's a lot of ways to enhance your LinkedIn profile and add things to it that you wouldn't otherwise have on your resume. And then once you've done that, you can then put the link to your profile. Right here is mine. You can put the link to your profile on your resume, in your email signature. in your cover letter. You can direct people and drive the traffic to your LinkedIn profile so that they can sort of, again, see the big picture and see a sort of a holistic view of who you are as a professional and all of your different skill sets. Let me go into a little bit about privacy and some of the different account and settings on your profile. So when you go into LinkedIn, if you there's a tiny little thumbnail of your profile picture, and if you click there and you go into where it says your name, I'm sorry, where it says privacy and settings, then you go there. And notice it immediately asks me to log in again, which is a built-in security setting. Okay, now that I logged in again and it knows that it's me making these decisions, it gives you the opportunity. This first tab here is privacy controls. You can turn on or off if, basically if I wrote an article or I was quoted in a press release for CUNY SPS, that might show up to people who I'm connected with. I can decide whether I want that to be turned on or turned off. Same thing with activity broadcasts. So when you first look at LinkedIn, you can scroll down through and you can see what people in your network are doing. This person posted a job. This person liked this article. This person updated their profile. This person posted an article. I can decide whether I want people to see if I'm doing those things or not, and I can choose to turn that on or off here. I can decide who sees those types of things. So if I don't want anyone to see that except for my direct connections, I could choose that. I could also decide if, when I'm looking at someone else's profile, I can decide if they know I'm looking at their profile or if it's someone anonymous. The choice is basically, so if I was looking at someone's profile today, and I probably was when I was preparing, they'll be able to see whether or not I've looked at them and how much information. So they could either see my name and my headline, they could see an anonymous profile characteristic, someone at CUNY School of Professional Studies, or finally totally anonymous. The only problem and issue with this is that whatever I choose is whatever I'm able to see when others look at my profile. So that's why I decide to leave it open, because I want to know if someone has looked at my profile. That's sort of a personal preference and your own choice. Another sort of area that I think can be important is your profile photo and your visibility. So basically, this is where I could delete or change my profile. And it also, if you click on View Profile As, this is what my profile looks like to people I'm connected with directly. This is what my profile looks like to people who I'm not connected with. So they can see a little bit. They can see my name, they can see my heading and my current and previous experience and education. They can see summary, they can see the basics, but they can't see my picture. They can't see everything. They can't necessarily see who my connections are, who has endorsed me. They can't see too much specific stuff. And all of that I have set up, I've been deliberate about that, because what you can do is you can decide when you're making edits to your profile, you can decide who can view things. So you have the opportunity to make those changes. Right here, manage public profile settings, and here it gives you the option to choose who can see what. One area that I think comes up a lot is that I allow my connections to see my other connections, but if I'm not already connected with you, you're not able to see who I'm connected with. It's a little confusing, but it's just sort of, a lot of it is personal preference, but LinkedIn does a great job, I think, in allowing you a lot of flexibility to have, a pretty visible profile or a not as visible profile. I will say that if you are planning to start making a lot of changes to LinkedIn, and you're maybe going to be conducting a job search confidentially, that you might want to turn off some of these things so that if you're connected with colleagues or your boss, that they won't be able to see when you're making a bunch of changes and updates to your profile. And instead, they'll just see maybe when you turn back on the notifications that you've made changes. If you have some more specific questions or concerns about privacy and security with LinkedIn, I invite you to reach out to me or to your career counselor directly to find out about what makes the most sense for you. Another area in this section of LinkedIn that I think can be useful is under the Communications tab. You can decide how often you receive emails, so you go under the frequency of emails setting, and you can also decide who can send you invitations. And as I spoke earlier about deciding who to connect with or who not to connect with, this is where you can sort of decide who's even able to invite you to connect with them. So that's something that I think is pretty interesting. I'm getting a ton of questions here, and I'm realizing I've only got like 2 or 3 minutes left. So I'll go on for 5 more minutes, just a couple of minutes after 1:30. I think I just answered this question. Okay, and let me just address, I've gotten a couple of questions just in general about making a strong profile. The thing with LinkedIn to keep in mind is that it's not just a copy of your resume. So you have the opportunity to put a lot more on LinkedIn than you would on a resume. And many times a resume should still just be 1 page. So you don't have the opportunity to, maybe you can't list all of your courses in LinkedIn. Maybe you can't, maybe you've been out of the workforce for a little while. You've stayed at home taking care of your children, and you haven't, had a lot of recent work experience, but you've been volunteering with the PTA. So maybe this is something that you talk a little bit about on your LinkedIn profile. You talk about your coursework, projects that you've done in school. You can also ask for recommendations from people who may not be colleagues or supervisors, but you could ask a professor for a recommendation, or maybe you worked on a group project and you could ask a classmate that worked closely with you to provide you a recommendation. You're able to do that, somewhat easily. And as you can see on the profile, you have the opportunity to add media specifically to your education section. So if you were studying within a master's program and maybe you created a video as part of a class project, you can add that to your LinkedIn profile under your education section, and it's very easy for a prospective employer to see the video. Whereas if you sent them a resume, that wouldn't necessarily be something that they would be able to see and really understand what you're capable of. The other thing to keep in mind with LinkedIn, as is true with a resume, is that it's something that should constantly be updated. I even noticed today during today's presentation that I had a phone number on here that was incorrect, so I need to go through and change that. It's important that when you're making updates to your LinkedIn profile, whether it's something that you want your connections to see or you turn off that activity broadcast and that they don't see it, that it's a good idea, just like with your resume, to have a second set of eyes to look at your profile, to see, if there is something that's missing or if the categories don't seem in the right order. I would certainly recommend talking with your career counselor or a trusted colleague or a spouse or friend about your LinkedIn profile to see if they have any ideas about what can be added to it or changed. So in conclusion, with today's webinar, as I said, I'm sorry that I don't have more time to answer your questions today, but I hope that the presentation has been worthwhile. Those of you who are CUNY SPS students or graduates, I urge you to reach out to us in Career Services if you have more questions or if you're interested in getting some support otherwise with your job search and professional development. We'd love to hear from you. Those of you who are joining us maybe from other campuses, I encourage you to reach out to your career centers for the same sort of assistance. I know they'd be eager to hear from you. If you're interested in connecting with me on LinkedIn, please feel free to do so. If you're not a student or alum from CUNY SPS, just put a little note in your invitation and let me know that you attended today's webinar. And I'll be more likely to accept your connection. And also, if you're interested, follow me on Twitter. I hope that some of you, if you're interested, will consider joining us for our third and final part of the Learn Over Lunch webinar series coming up on Thursday, November 19th. That one's going to be presented by Kelsey Richardson, and I know she's been working hard on it, so it's going to be fantastic. And finally, for SPS students and graduates, we're having a mock interview event coming up after the first of the year. So contact us if you might be interested in that as well. In conclusion, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that it's been worthwhile and that we get to present another webinar to you again soon. Take care, everybody.